Good morning, everybody. It's 3 p.m. here, 9 a.m. in the Netherlands. We have committed to start on time. We've got 22 participants and a bit more coming in. This is Pier Andrea Pirani. I'm calling in from Kota Kinabalu, Malaysia, and I'm the technical host for this session today. I hope everybody can hear me all right, and I hope we'll stay that way throughout the session. So before we start, as I said, I'm going to be the technical host for the meeting today. You know, again, you've been in probably a lot of Zoom meetings these days. These are the ground rules. I see that somebody has the microphone open, so let's please make sure you keep your microphone on mute when you're not speaking. I'm just trying to find out.
Galaxy A50, I think, yeah.
Yes, I'm muted. So let's keep our microphone muted when we're not speaking. Let's use the chat. Let's use the chat throughout. Gladys is going to be monitoring the chat, and she's going to be engaging with you in the chat. Yes, as I mentioned before, the session is going to be recorded. So we're recording all the sessions for this event, all the 10 sessions, because we want to have a record for posterity, but also because, you know, due to time zones and time differences, not everybody can join live. So we'll make them available later on. I've already talked about having speakers off. So at this point, I'm gonna mute myself and I'm gonna go hand over to Ellen, who's gonna facilitate our session and leading us through the program today. Thank you very much. Ellen, over to you.
Hi, everybody, welcome. As we were just saying, this is one of 4 sessions today, and the 7th out of 10 in total. And as we know, many of you know, it's to celebrate the 20th anniversary of our fantastic community, km4dev. And in fact, in honor of this occasion, I've traded in my t-shirt with holes in it and shorts for a dress and even lipstick. So it's really a cause for celebration. I'd also just like to mention I'm joined by Gladys Kemboy. Today she'll be moderating the chat. And I think now we can move on to the relay message. From each session, there's a message passed on to the next session, a key message. The one from the last session, which was, how could a KM perspective allow us to more effectively address political polarization as facilitators? That was the topic. The message is address rather than avoid political polarization through building trust, finding common ground, and practicing deep listening. Hashtag KM4Dev advice. Okay, yes, please, if anyone has Twitter, please send that message out. The next thing is that we just want to do a quick poll because we'd like to get an idea of the type of people who are in the room today, because we just don't have time for everyone to introduce themselves. So Pier Andrea will launch the poll.
Yeah, you should be able to see the poll now. So if you can quickly cast your vote, just to give us a sense of where you're coming from in terms of background and where you're sitting, where you're in terms of working and work environment. We'll just run this one quickly. So if we can please fill in your vote. We've got 65% of people now, votes are coming in. And as you can see, we got 43 participants. Some are still on the way. I hope now the sound is good for everybody. There was some background noise. Everybody now should be on mute. So we've got almost 90% of votes. So I think we can close it in 3, 2, 1. So the poll is closed and here are the results. So as you can see, it's interesting. We got quite a mix, but yeah, majority UN and international NGOs. And then, well, I'm curious, the people that field others, if you can maybe, you know, type in the chat what other means. So we have a bit of a more understanding. We could have probably put some more categories here, but yeah, if you can put in the chat what other means, then we know better where are you coming from. I'm going to stop sharing the results here, and over to you, Ellen, again.
Yeah, we'll make this quick because we are running slightly over time. Here, I'd like to introduce Shrividya Harish. She will be telling us a story today about how to do KM on a zero budget, which is something we'd all like to know more about. So I'm sure we'll find this very interesting. Shrividya is based in Bangalore in India, and she works for ActionAid. Which is a global movement of people fighting for women's rights, social justice, and an end to poverty. She says she's been in KM for 13 years, but most of the time didn't know that was what she was doing. She's been working more formally in KM for the past 3 years in ActionAid, and she's been part of km4dev for 1 year. In this session, she'll present a case study on KM in her organisation. She says that in ActionAid in India, people are more interested in doing than documenting or doing KM. They struggle with a lot of challenges, including access to the internet. They're overworked with little time, and they have to juggle their commitment to trying to do everything with their passion to deliver with limited resources. So Shrividya would like you to listen to her story and then challenge her and challenge ActionAid's approach, and then support her and her organisation to map out its next steps in KM. So now I'll hand over to you, Shrividya.
Sorry, thanks, Helen. So if Pia or anybody can tell me whether my screen is visible.
Yeah, it's good. Can you maybe just go full screen, go in presentation mode?
Yes, I will. Thank you. Okay, so welcome everybody. So just to start off, if we have our own enablers and barriers in my organization, right, in ActionAid. So what are some of those enablers and barriers, some of those things that are known, right, when in the sector, in researchers and stuff. So if you can just use the chat function and for a couple of minutes, just talk about what are those enablers and barriers that you know. Since I'm on full screen, I will not be able to monitor the chat, but we have Gladys who is monitoring it.
Yes, we have some answers coming in, so please keep them coming. We'll run this poll, this exercise for a few minutes. Let's see what we get, and if there is any commonalities, or what are the commonalities and the outliers. I see in champions for enablers, management support, having a unit responsible for KM. Ellen, are you catching something else? You're on mute, Ellen. Lack of trust, I guess that's a barrier.
Understanding of the value of KM, having a KM unit.
Yeah, low prioritization. Culture of sharing, I guess that's an enabler.
Yeah, we've got a lot coming out about champions.
Yeah. And management.
Very important. Yeah, champions and management, very important.
Mm-hmm.
Requirements from donors. That's interesting. All right, maybe a few more seconds. But this is great. Gladys, what did you catch?
Lack of time and lack of information sharing.
Yeah.
Yeah, barrier, paperwork and procedures. I know about that. I work in the UN.
Yeah, there is a lot to harvest here. Huh? This is great. Yeah.
Understanding KM is about people. That's a big enabler. It also can be a barrier when it's a lack of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, big barrier is when there's a strong focus on technology only. There's still a lot of people out there who think KM is about technology.
And another barrier is taking KM as a separate component.
Mm-hmm.
An enabler is adequate budget, which many people don't have.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot here, huh? There's a
Yes.
lot.
Beautiful. So if we can move on, but please do keep your chats coming, and we will throughout the session revisit it. So at least, and it will be available for recording purposes. So we will move on to all these barriers and all these challenges, right? So that is where ActionAid started, right? So a lot of those barriers that you have mentioned, lack of management support, no champions being present, nothing to build on, you see. So these are the barriers that even ActionAid faced, and some of the enablers that you have mentioned were just not available for us. So what exactly was available for us and what exactly was not? So just to set the scene, right? So ActionAid is a federation, and it's quite important because as a federation we are in 45 countries, but we do not have, our politics does not allow us a single hierarchical structure where you can pass down pass down instructions, right? So I cannot dictate to the country sitting at a global secretariat what the country needs to invest in or what the country needs to do. Everything is a negotiation, right? So in every country has a vote, and what happens inside the countries, if they want to do a case study, for example, they will do it. There is no way for you to enforce it and say this is a requirement, right? So other than your donor compliance ones and your legal compliance ones, there is nothing where as an enabler where the CEO, even our Secretary General, can say that from tomorrow onwards everybody in ActionAid should give 10% of their time to document and write reports. So we can't do that, right? So it's very important for us that as a federation, each individual, each country, their agency is respected. So everything then becomes negotiation, right? Nothing can be in order. So how did KM actually turn up in our conversations? Why did ActionAid actually go ahead and talk about knowledge management? Because we come up with strategy every few years, right? So our latest strategy is for 10 years. And whenever a new strategy comes, we have a huge process, an year-long process of taking stock, of reflecting what worked, what didn't work. We have external people coming in and giving their opinion on, what are your strengths and weaknesses. So this is a huge exercise which happens, a very participatory exercise. And then you come up with a report called Taking Stock, right? So in our Taking Stock exchange, before this strategy, the new strategy, which is Action for Global Justice, which is till 2028, the Taking Stock review said that one of the biggest limitations in ActionAid is that you produce a lot of information. You have a lot of research reports, guidelines, white papers, so many things, but you haven't been able to make use of it, right? So properly. So you haven't been able to do it properly. It remains, huge reports, 100-page reports that nobody has bothered to read other than the people who worked on the report, obviously. So since that was brought up, the management decided that, okay, we need to do something so that we manage our information better, we manage our knowledge better, we use it for, policy influencing, we use it for narrative building, we use it for decision making. And one of the strategic commitments is to amplify the voices of the communities that we work with. So how do you actually amplify the voices of the communities you work with? Obviously, if there is no process, if there is no management, then you will not be able to do it. You will be just amplifying your own voices, or you will be amplifying your donor voices maximum, right? So of all this consideration, they said that, okay, now let us do something about it. So where are we now? So what happened later? So because of this, right? So in the global secretariat, I said we are a federation governed by, not governed, coordinated by a small secretariat. So in the secretariat, we had two roles coming in, which concentrated both on learning and knowledge management, right? So one was, initially the thought was that, okay, knowledge management is both explicit knowledge that is documented, and tacit knowledge that is in people's heads. And let's try and have two roles, working one working with the documented knowledge. That was me. So that's why systems advisor comes in my role. And another working with knowledge that is now in people's heads. So how, mentorship, peer support, knowledge sharing, webinars. So coordinating something, on that end, focusing more on learning. So that is where the role or the positioning of KM came in. And interestingly, what was done was, it was not viewed as an organizational function. They put us in the programs, directorate along with program people, because that is where, you wanted the knowledge to amplify and come out. And we merged with monitoring, evaluation, and learning, our MEL team, also program quality. So this unit handles learning, also individual learning, e-learning, all kinds of learning strategies. It handles knowledge management, it handles MEL, and it handles program quality for the whole federation. So that is how, right? So we were set up. Okay, so we set up, there is this role now, which is called knowledge curation and systems advisor, who is supposed to do this documented knowledge. And what do we do, right? So we had some initiatives, like we had some COPs, but nobody called it knowledge management. We had some, external collaborations and stuff, but again, nobody thought about it as, as KM or anything. So what was this role supposed to do? So the plan initially, after a lot of research, was to do a knowledge audit first, right? So I think a lot of us will identify with the plan, because this is, this is what most organizations do when they say knowledge management. So do a audit basically, and then from the audit, simultaneously do a taxonomy project to determine, some kind of a language for ActionAid. And use both the results of the audit and the taxonomy to do what we were calling learning and knowledge portal, right? Come up with a portal for ActionAid. So the idea was also that our intranet, which was on SharePoint, was being retired. So you thought, let us use this opportunity now in this transition from SharePoint to Office 365 to retire the intranet concept at, completely, and just have a knowledge portal, right? But sounds very nice, but we failed, and we failed spectacularly. So why did we fail in this first year? One, because we didn't really think about dependencies. So the Office 365 rollout project took longer than expected. Their governance policies took longer than expected. So there, your learning and knowledge portal, that whole work got postponed and postponed and postponed. And what we were talking about, so those dependencies you didn't really map out really well. So it didn't help us. It was too new. So when you were talking to your organization, you were trying to convince them that it is very important that, we have a proper list of, proper taxonomy, a proper metadata that will help us search, that will help us, categorize information and all that. It was too new for people. People just blanked out. They didn't buy in. They didn't understand it. They didn't understand the value of it, right? It was not in a language that was familiar to them. The language, ActionAid's familiar languages. How are you going to counter neoliberalism, challenge power, shift power, heteronormativity, LGBTQ rights? So this is what people are, community, voices, rootedness. This is what we are familiar with, right? So you're not familiar with technology, taxonomy, metadata, curation. That was not comfortable. It was too new for people. And third, where we failed was that we didn't really think about it as a change management exercise. We thought of it as a project that needs to be done, right? So, that is where our failures came. So, and after a year, very, patting on ourselves, on our back myself, we realized that we are going nowhere, with the plans that we have, although they were wonderful plans. So what did we do, right? So we quickly changed. So the twist in the tail, we abandoned our course completely. We said these three are not working. It is not, helping us. It's going nowhere. And let's stop it and let's do something different, right? So what we concentrated on was, what is it that is an incremental change that can, help buy-in? Quick wins, things that are people already familiar with, but just one step extra on that, right? So, and what is it that we can do to now familiarize and institutionalize knowledge management as a concept, because it's still new. So how do you create that mind space in people? So we ran something called a 42 weeks of learning campaign, email, right? Right in the email, we curated a lot of resources from inside and outside of ActionAid, and every week it would go out. So it just started a buzz around, oh, learning. Oh, okay, these are the knowledge resources. This is it. Like, it goes against knowledge management principles, because it is in, email. There is no institutional memory, and if people want to come back, they have to bookmark that email and everything. But our intention there was not so much as to, permanency, but just to create that buzz and the culture of sharing and everything. So people started noticing it. Our CDs started writing back to us saying, our country director saying, oh, this is so useful for us. Our fundraisers started telling us that, oh, this is so useful for us. I can use this as a case study to fundraise. So, this year, 2020, what we did, we shifted to Sway, so that now there is an institutional memory. You can go to back editions and everything. And now people know the format, people know what is it. So every week there is a learning resource, which is an external packaging. So what is available in the sector for you. We regularly feature, most of the UN documents, FAO documents, which are there, everybody, to pursue. So internal to ActionAid, external to ActionAid, so that you don't repeat the work that somebody else has already done wonderfully before, right? So
Sridhar, sorry to interrupt. I'm holding up the 3-minute card.
Okay, sorry, I'll go fast. So then what we did was, we also wanted to develop the federation capacity around knowledge management, right? So, and if I say I will do a knowledge management course, nobody is going to sign up for it. So we did something called cafes, knowledge management cafes, where we were very practical. How will you do a PowerPoint presentation? How will you write a case study? How will you learn while you are working? What is a personal knowledge management plan? How will you come up with something like that, right? So very strategic and very practical kind of cafes. Then you did knowledge curation and packaging of some of the materials that we could negotiate to, with people about. And since we are a MEL unit, a lot of MEL resources, and you curated them and packaged them and shows, look, this is how, you do knowledge management. This is what we mean when we say knowledge management. We did case study as one of the knowledge products, and we developed a template, and we did, built the capacity of the people in order to use that template. That now showed them the difference between what they were doing before and how do you tell an impact story of your organization. We encouraged communities of practice, that which we had direct control over. We came up with knowledge management resources. a resource kit that we will use in next year in order to develop capacity. We added some jazz and some swag into knowledge management, made it a little bit cool to say, one of the ways was knowledge harvesting, and we called it ActionAid Radio, or we are calling it ActionAid Radio. Something cool for people to rally behind, right? And then we substantially reduced the ambition of having a knowledge portal for the whole of ActionAid to only for the programs cluster. So where you had a much more direct influence. So that's what we did from 2019. And you can see that some evidence of success. We had like, since we sent an email and sent it to everybody in ActionAid and some key external stakeholders, you had like 2,000 people, the reach of that bulletin is. So this is for the bulletin, which was our primary platform to showcase everything, right? The harvesting, the case studies, all the learning initiatives. So 42 countries reached, 80% was active content with some call of action, register for this webinar, do this, do that, things like that. So this is mainly for us. So we have programs and organizational functions are different in ActionAid. So these were the number of learning resources that got shared, right? And we had 39 endorsements ranging from the country directors to our field officers who told us that, this is useful for me, which was very important for us because, it's important for us that the field officers, the interns, the volunteers, they also benefit from it, as well as the influencers know about the initiative. So a little bit, there is one small quote from one of our project officers. We had 23 KM cafes that I told you about. And we produced 12 case studies that is aligned to our theory of change. So a template, a conversation, and then building capacity around it. Again, a little bit of the evidence. I told you about, we packed, knowledge packaging as one of the methods. So here it is. We had a big forum where we talked about how to work with social movements. So you developed an infographic from it to say, okay, take 10 key insights. Communities of practice, we are in charge of 4 communities of practice, and we brought in learning and knowledge management into these communities of practice of MEL people, of project heads of programs, as we call them. So we did the, reduced the ambition to a page cluster portal. So till now we have like 516 users, which is quarter of ActionAid's staff visited it. So which is quite good for us. It's 6-7 months old now. So the learning, so buy-in is not a one-time activity. You have to keep demonstrating different things, small wins. You need to align with your organization's mission, find hooks, that link with your mission, talk the language of your strategy, tap into established processes and platforms, like you have an annual reporting coming in, tap into it. We already had a MEL infrastructure, tap into it. Solve an express need. Case study was an express need. Our senior leadership said that we don't tell impact stories well, so we did that. Borrow champions, again here, find the hooks. We borrowed our champions from head of programs and policy, which was already a community, from the MEL champions, which was already a community, with the HROD, the HR people who are already a community. We just borrowed them, convinced them that their work is our work. And communicate smartly is something that I came up with. You have to communicate hard, communicate in very shortly. Oh, India took up so many courses, well done for you. Communicate multiple times, communicate aesthetically with lot of visuals, graphics, everything. Communicate something that is real, that is not, just think pieces, but, something concrete, and communicate timely. So within time, so that is, our learnings. So what are next steps for us that we have thought about for 2021? We work under a framework of this, infrastructure, capacity, and culture. So you build the infrastructure, then you build the capacity of the people to use the infrastructure, And then you promote a culture of actually using, because unless people are motivated, even if they have a capacity, they are not going to use it. So this is the framework we use. So within that framework, we said that the knowledge management resource kit, we are piloting it with 2 countries this year. And we will use that to build capacity next year onwards. Virtual workshops on these. Quick win impact stories. We have a lot of our countries coming up for mid-year strategy review process. So we are going to tap into that and tell impact stories, amp up social media engagement, and maybe knowledge audit. So what do you suggest? You now have heard the story, you know what we are tackling with, and the budget will be -0 from next year, not even 0, considering COVID times. So what exactly will you recommend for ActionAid, and what will you challenge us on, right? So in the breakout sessions, which peers will allow you to, I think there is a small question and answer session. Helen, correct me.
Yes, let's go into the question and answer, Sridhar. You've gone 4.5 minutes over, so that means that we're going to have to cut the question time. It's really classic, isn't it? We're going to have to cut the question time and shorten the breakout groups. But what we will do is please write your questions in the chat, and Sridhar will answer them on km4dev. Thanks a lot, Sridhar. This was fantastic, really interesting. So let's take a few questions, but as I said, please write your questions in the chat and put up your little blue hands if you want to actually ask a question verbally. Gladys, do we have any, I know we have a lot of questions, I've seen them. Would you just like to pull out a couple so that Sridhar can answer them straight away?
Thank you, Ellen, and thank you, Srivita, for the amazing session. This one, an exciting question, to understand the curiosity about the zero cost aspect in your KM strategy. How did you come about that? Back to you, Helen.
Okay. Do you want me? Helen, do you want me to answer now?
Yeah, if you answer, well, I mean, I've seen there was a question in there about what do you mean by zero budget? People would like to know a little bit more. If you just keep it really short, though, about when you say zero budget, we understand what that means, but how did you do it with zero budget? Just a couple of key points, if you can.
Okay. So when we mean zero budget, we actually had absolutely no budget, right? So your campaign, your communities of practice, your case study, everything that you did as a quick win, you leveraged on, you know, resources of somebody else who had a budget, or you did it, or it did not require any budget. So your 42 weeks of learning campaign did not require any budget. It was our team doing it, writing it, right? So no consultant, nothing, you did it. Your cafes didn't require anybody, no budget. So your knowledge harvesting required no budget. So it was using your federation resources, it was using MS Teams and any other open source software. Strengthening your community of practice required just effort, no budget. So anything that, all the things that we have listed here as quick wins that we did in the second year, none of these things required any budget. It was done practically at zero budget, other than the time and the effort of the team, who, remember, also did MEL, program quality, and everything else. So, and that is what we recommend, right? So show the value without adding cost to the company, so that then you can ask the company to, your organization, to tell you that now, you know, we have reached this much with no budget, and with budget, this is where we can go forward, or this is what we can achieve. So
thanks a lot, Shvidya. I'm sorry, everyone, I'm not seeing any blue hands, but as I said, please keep writing your questions in the chat, and Shvidya will get back to you. Pier Andrea is going to take over now to move people into the breakout groups. And I don't know if Pier Andrea or Srividya will
Thanks, Helen.
pose the question.
Yes, so we'll do a bit of a quick breakout. Srividya, if you can go to the last slide where you've got your questions. So we will break you in small breakouts room of about 4 or 5 people, so you can have an intimate conversation in there. And we would like you to, Srividya would like some advice, right, on these elements. So now to move forward around infrastructure, capacity building, and culture. So this is the task for the breakout. If you can work as a consultant for Srividya and help her come up with some recommendations. So I'm going to put a link in the chat, and it's a slide deck on Google Slide. If you were with us yesterday, you know it's the same principle. So if you are in breakout room 1, please go find the corresponding slide, breakout room 1, and you'll see this questions listed, and you can type in there. Okay, so among the 4 or 5 in the breakout, select one of you to be the note taker, if you will, or rapporteur, and let's try to come up with some interesting ideas that Srividya can take home and then share back to the community, as she nicely did today. All right, so I hope the exercise is clear. I'm putting the link in the chat now, and I'm opening the breakout room. So please, when you're in the breakout, copy the link first, or open it already, and then in your breakout, go find your breakout slide and come up with brilliant ideas. We've got about 13 minutes for this exercise, so we'll see you back here in a bit. Thanks very much. Oh, it's nice to see everybody coming back in all of a sudden. Welcome back. I hope it was all right. I understand there were some issues in a couple of breakout, but hopefully all the others were okay. I think it was due to connection. People are present in the meeting, but probably they cannot connect in a proper way in terms of connectivity and device. Ellen, over to you.
Thanks, Pier Andrea. Well, I was in a great group. We had a really interesting discussion. There was someone with us who was a former ActionAid employee, so she had some interesting insights. Once again, we have not very much time. Pier Andrea, how much are we going to spend on this session? We have 10 minutes.
Got 8 minutes to, if we want to finish on time, as we promised we would, we have 8 minutes.
Yeah. Okay, so let's have 5 or 6 minutes. What we'd like is not have report back, but just if people could sort of contribute some key insights, key points, really, interesting advice that you came up with. I don't know, are people pressing their blue hands? Because I'm not seeing any. And keep putting things in the chat as well. Is there anybody where you want to put your hands up? Am I going to have to point to someone?
I think as a facilitator and moderator of the session, you're allowed to do.
Okay, Jonathan. I was in the group with Jonathan and he was writing notes in the, so would you give us a couple of insights, Jonathan?
Yeah, I can try to do that as much as I remember them. The point I contributed at the moment, which I think was very close to my heart, is having a greater use of advocacy. So we heard very clearly that, with limited budget, it is extremely challenging, and it's amazing to see what has been achieved. We know that there's a very finite budget, there's reducing budget year on year. What can be done through leveraging people who do have a capacity to influence and change culture, to increase the value, the perceived value of knowledge management, sharing and collaboration and all that. I think that's an opportunity. And by the way, it doesn't cost anything. We were just talking at the end, fascinated me also, about this shift towards learning through doing. So changing the role of learning to a more experiential level, because it kind of makes it real, it makes it more impactful. And I think that's key to enabling knowledge management to get into the culture, into the way that we do things naturally in an organization. And again, it doesn't really cost anything unless you might need tools and so on to express that learning. But I think as a cultural shift, you know, nothing can beat having experienced something. Those are my 2 key points. Hope that maybe that resonated with what you heard as well, Helen. I don't know.
I think we were also talking, I'm still not seeing any blue hands here. We were also talking about, it's not so much about, we felt it was less about infrastructure than about governance and architecture, which may include a strategy or an action plan. You mentioned a theory of change. It may include, if you don't have a very big central team, if it's just you, it may include trying to get focal points. We talked across the organisation. We also just talked briefly about the significance of monitoring and reporting in order in a formal way, but using more qualitative methods to be able to gather stories or whatever to demonstrate value. You may have talked about that a bit, but they were some of the key points. We've still got a couple of minutes, have we yet, Andrea?
Yeah, we've got two blue hands.
I see Arwin Bailey there. Arwin, would you like to tell us something about your group?
I will, because I know you're struggling here. Nobody wants to put their name forward. So in our group, what I particularly liked was the focus on process, because quite often KM gets seen as the structure, the platform, and so on. But how it's a journey, it's a process. And also talking about capacity building, one of the people in our group was highlighting, and I completely agree, and I think it gets neglected, the need for capacity building in the soft skills, in the getting to know each other, in the water cooler, the sort of the trust building side of it that allows everything else to happen. So it's not so much, obviously we need also capacity building, how you use the tools and what's the theory of change and those sort of more structured things, but the importance of the process and the soft skills. And so that's my take home from our group. Although there's a lot more, obviously, but that's my personal one.
Still no blue hands. Sylvia Capizzuoli, were you in a different group, and would you like to tell us something?
We were in Breakout 1. I was going to say, I was just trying to put my hand up, Helen, but I just about found it. But yeah, I'd echo what has just been said, actually, because it was more the idea of when we talked about infrastructure, it was more the idea of actually thinking not so much nominated, but finding focal points, not having champions within your federation. Stradivia, you were talking about, all the different countries have their own choices and mandates. There's no one, top-down way of working, obviously. So it was about trying to see really within that architecture who you could find, and having people who either could be mentors, coaches, facilitators. They don't have to be KM people themselves, but I mean, they can be supporting that process. And when we had a bit of a discussion to clarify that when we say KM people, we don't mean it's their job only and nobody else's. Obviously, KM is everybody's job, learning and sharing, but it's about having the idea that you have go-to people who can coach and mentor. And then it brought us to the point about that actually we need to build a lot of different skills, communication skills, advocacy skills, the ability to lobby and advocate for this way of working, which means that you need to be able to explain why you need that way of working and show how it works, obviously. And then we talked about the importance of legitimizing, and having HR on board and legitimizing that you may even have dedicated positions like yourselves or partial positions, so that you can be recognized officially. I think that was a lot of things from our group. I'm just trying to think what else we had. Anyone else from our group? And obviously continue working with what you've got already. When you did the twist in the tail and you showed all those ways of adapting, that was really great. So the first message would be to continue with that. You don't necessarily need to change it radically, and making sure you're doing that with your partners in country. We were wondering whether it was only internal to ActionAid programs or also with the partners. Yeah, I think that was it.
Thanks a lot, Sylvia. Look, we have to finish now. I think this has been a great discussion. I really wish... Peter, are you delaying us?
No, but yeah, but Silva had their hand up since a long time, eh?
Yeah.
Okay, super quickly. I really think you talk about zero budget, but you are employed on knowledge management. And I really think we need to remember that being employed is a massive investment in a profession. And in a world where we always talk about budget investment for things, infrastructure, it's so important to remember that what matters most is to have staff.
Yeah.
And so really do value that, because the experience is that people make the change. You may not have the infrastructure, but if you have, as ActionAid would say, the courage of conviction, and you create power and space, it is an organization where you can influence. And saying, yes, I am a resource, probably would go a long way also.
Thanks a lot. Peter, no more interruptions, please. We have to finish now. So look, thank you. I wish we had more time. As I said, Srividya will get back to you. Thank you very much, Srividya, for sharing your experience. It should have been 2 hours. We have to remember that for next time. Some of these sessions need to be longer. Thank you to everyone for participating. Can we just like skip the relay message and put it in, just go directly into the next group, or you want to put it on the screen? I actually have another meeting and I'm supposed to be opening it.
That's fine. So as part of the process, we'll have a relay message to give to the other session. We'll tweet it out so you can find it on Twitter. But before, yeah, that's it. So that's what Srividya is gonna post as a relay message. And if you haven't done it yet, please take the km4dev 20 anniversary quiz. There is a prize to win. I just put the link in the chat. And it's fun. I did it yesterday. I had 3 questions wrong. I'm not telling you which one they are. But yeah, it's fun. It's fun. Thanks very much for joining us today. We are recording this. We'll make available through the km4dev list. We'll make sure all the questions are answered. And I hope to see you later in some other sessions today. We've got experience capitalization. That's the next one. We've got online collaboration at 1 p.m. And then we've got the closing party at 3 p.m. Central European time. So hope to see you in those meetings.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks very much, Helen. Thanks, Srividya. And
thanks
Gladys.
you, all of you.
Thank you so much from Nigeria. Thank you for a great session.
Thanks,
Bye.
Dave.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. And thanks all for your valuable inputs.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Hi,
Thank you
everyone.
Bye.
Of course, if you have time, you can feel free to squat here. I'm not in a rush to leave. So, as in every meeting, you know, when the meeting is over, you always have some follow-up conversations, side conversations. So feel free to stick around for a bit if you don't have any other immediate commitment. I'm just stopping the recording now.